And now I'd like to revisit the coercion story. Many people talk about the coercion that went on in the Central Park 5 case, and they often state that police officers coerced these 5 guys. So the question is that the truth? If it is the truth, how do we determine that it is? Well, we have multiple clips from these guys in different interviews and documentaries that we can analyze and try and answer that question. Now, looking at the Burns documentary, you'll see lots of edited clips that seem to suggest that they say that they made up stories.
Like, I don't know these guys that's there, so I'm just gonna make up something and include these guys' names.
Kevin is saying this happened, Antron is saying this happened. And they were stopping me during my retelling of the events and saying, is this where you got the woman? Is that where?
But you're not gonna go home until you say a story.
He gave me the names, I put them in. I couldn't tell you who they were, who they looked like. If he would have gave me 100 names, I would have put 100 people at the crime scene.
Now, if you remember correctly, you'll recall that I spoke about snitching in a previous video. Now, if you listen to that clip just a second ago, you hear Raymond Santana saying that police officers had given him names to put in this story that he made up. Isn't that worse than snitching? I mean, you're making up stories about other human beings at this point, your friends, your neighbors. You're making up stories about them and getting them sent to prison. All because you believe the police officers? When they tell you that these other kids are telling stories about you, you're not supposed to believe that. This is common sense 101. Every person in the hood knows this stuff. Back in 89, they knew this stuff. They were hanging out with drug dealers. At the time, Michael Briscoe was selling drugs, and so was Jermaine Robinson. So we know that there were criminals in their midst. Steve Lopez wasn't a good kid. You know what I'm saying? A lot of these kids were of the streets. They knew the street codes. They're sitting here acting like they didn't know and snitching is okay. And y'all are cool with it.
Why did you tell them something that wasn't true, that you hadn't seen?
I was only guess just to save my own life. Get out of there as quickly as I can as possible, because I've been there too long as it was.
Now, over the course of a few days, they rounded up 37 teens. How was it that the police officers decided on these particular 5? What was it about these 5 that police officers thought was different from the others? The other kids were black and brown as well. Why not arrest all 37 black and brown kids rather than just 5? Well, 10 ended up being arrested. 5 of them took plea deals and pled to robbery and assault and things of that nature. Why is it that these 5 were selected? The answer is simple. These are the names of the people who were there. These guys remembered each other, so they put those names in there.
And I was like, how could they lie? So I was like, I'm gonna get them back.
At that point, I told myself I just want to go home.
I thought I had the upper hand because here I had a detective who was saying, I'm gonna make sure you go home.
I was thinking that I was never gonna go home. I gave these people what they wanted to hear. I lied.
I say, well, this is where it happened, at the reservoir. I'm placing the scene of the crime at the reservoir. And he doesn't really say, but he gives me this look like, what are you talking about?
I just gave written statement just to satisfy them, just to get them out my face with it, and trying to be on my way out their building. And afterwards, he had me sign on it. So I signed on it.
So I was just like, whatever, yeah, I had something to do with it. Just to get out of there.
So then the question becomes, well, how did they make up stories that all kind of went together. And when they were on tape, how did they remember these stories? Because those tapes are unedited. There's no chops in the tapes. They seem to recall everything word for word. How does a 15-year-old kid, or 5 15-year-old kids, or multiple, not all of them were on tape, but how do multiple 15-year-old kids remember the same story without making any mistakes? I don't know about some of you, but I've worked in the theater. As a kid, when I was about their age, I was made to remember songs. I was in the chorus and choir, and having to remember those things required weeks worth of work. People expect you to believe that they learn this story within a few hours. I just don't see that that could be the case.